automatically record. All right.
And when I do Zoom for YouTube, I have to go to the little 3 dots on the bottom and hit record to the cloud.
Now I'm going to turn on the share screen. Hold on. There we go. We're going to turn the screen sharing on. And in just a few seconds, I'm going to try and time it right down to the second. I'm going to start the countdown clock, which you should now see on the screen. And people will also see little images of us. They'll be able to see us. Here we go. And hear us. So we are actually live at this moment, and there are a few people who, mostly the moderators, who are helping now. But this means once we go live, announcements are sent out to the subscribers who ask for them. Maybe 10,000 people or so get the announcement that we're going live. So they're going to start to join us over the next 10 minutes so that when we begin the program officially, there'll be a lot of people there.
And we go for 90 minutes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'll see if I have energy and I'm not, exhausted, I'll be happy to talk to your moderators.
Yeah, that's up to you, really. You have to, your energy is the most important thing.
Right, so we'll see, because I wasn't even sure. Anyway, I'm trying to be as up and energetic as I can.
Well, you're a very energetic person, and well, I anticipate that you'll be fine, but if you're not, don't worry, because I'll spend time with the moderators if you're not.
Well, sometimes I feel super energetic after a talk, that it gives me energy.
Which is typical of these events, but it is up to you. And the moderators are probably listening now, so they'll understand.
Okay.
And I'm happy to spend time with them in any case, so we'll be good.
Oh, and I want to thank you. When I've watched the shows you produce after, because I never like to hear myself talk afterwards, just where you insert the photos, where they're so fabulously produced. So if any of your producers are listening, tell them what an incredible job you all are doing.
You're talking to all the producers.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want you to know, Mr. Producer, you're my model of how I want to do my show. So now I read the person's book. I try to do as much investigating, and you're set up there.
I'm very fortunate to have a good staff of volunteers like the moderators who are helping out right now. But when it comes to the video editing, I do all of that.
You do all of that. Well, that's going to be my son now. He's the new Jeffrey Mishlove.
So, and your programs are video, or are they just audio on your?
Video and audio. They're Zooms just like this.
I see.
And then they put them on the other platforms.
Yeah.
YouTube is my biggest. YouTube and Apple Podcasts are my biggest, listeners.
Does Apple Podcasts give you data about who?
It does. But unfortunately, the people I were working with never told me any of that. But it's my daughter who's been showing it to me.
Really? Because we put our audios of our videos out on Apple Podcasts, and I've never seen anywhere where I get data from it.
Well, I could be wrong, but if you send me a text, I will ask Nancy.
Okay.
She is a whiz at this, and she may say, "Oh no, you don't get it from that. You just get it from this and this." You can't quote me on those because she's handling it, and she knows that world very well.
See, we've got somebody is already online from Singapore.
Oh, wow.
with us. So we're
So do they
reaching.
type it? So they're texting you the questions?
Yeah. It's right now it's going slowly, but later on it goes fast because we could have hundreds and hundreds of people, and they're all putting their questions in. The moderators then select the best of those questions. They send them to me on a separate document that only I see, and then I pick from those questions the best and the most appropriate ones to pose to you.
Great.
So it's an interesting process, and it takes time. I couldn't do it without these moderators.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting them afterwards. And
somebody from Iran was on.
I have my dear friend that produced the Woodstock book. She has her alarm on so that it pings exactly in time to listen.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I know that there's two friends of mine who will be listening, and that feels so good. And 10,000 of your friends.
So, and then afterwards, the archival video will be available for people to view, and typically several thousand people will view it.
Well, we're doing good. When I've looked at the other ones we've done together, you were my first 1,000-person viewings on my podcasts. And now Sally Rhinefeather follows behind you. But you hit 1,000 for any of the people I've ever interviewed. So thank you.
Well, I'm honored.
I am too. Okay, and I'm wearing a little bit of something. These are earrings from Mongolia. These are a Mongolian symbol.
I can't quite see because you see the picture's so small right now.
Oh yeah, well there it is.
There it is. I saw it. Uh-huh.
And jade from China when I was in China. That was given to a friend's mother, and she gave it back to me after her mother passed away, my first boyfriend's mom. I got the Huichol bracelet on. I'm trying to encompass my different cultures in one body. But when we do the shamanic initiation, I'm even going to bring out the special bone and all these different tools to show the listeners.
Yes, we have. Have we scheduled that in the calendar yet?
No, we have not.
Oh,
So
well, here, do you have your calendar handy?
I do.
Maybe we can at least try to put a date in to do that interview.
Okay.
I have my calendar. We have 3 minutes. How about, today is the 15th.
16.
You're right. Today is the 16th. We could do it. We could do it on Saturday, the 22nd. Would you like to do it then?
Let's see. Maybe just a little later because I've got a busy week that week.
Okay.
And the following Saturday, I have something. But anything after that, I'm fine.
After the following Saturday?
Yeah.
So we could do it on
Sunday the 30th, or unless that's not a good day for you.
how about on the 3rd of February, Thursday the 3rd?
Perfect. Perfect.
All right. And what's the best time for you?
The ones we've been doing have been perfect. Like we've been doing 1 or 2 o'clock my time, or how is that?
No, that's good.
Okay, so whichever one you want, that's good for you because you're 2 hours later.
All right, let's say, no, I'm 1 hour.
1 hour later.
Yeah, so let's say at 2 o'clock my time, which will be 1 o'clock your time.
Perfect, 1 o'clock Pacific. And it won't be Zoom, it'll be the old style.
That's right.
Okay.
There, it's in the calendar now.
Okay, it's in mine too. And then I told Julio, who's here, my Huichol Indian friend, that we're going to be doing an interview about the Huichol.
Uh-huh.
So when we get that set up, I'm going to have somebody come over who speaks fluent Spanish to answer questions for me about Huichol actual shamanism information from an actual Huichol, not from a book so that I'll have that information to share with the listeners.
Okay.
Besides all the beach old stories I have are phenomenal.
Yeah, we haven't even started on those.
No,
Well,
and I'll
you
wear,
touched on them briefly.
yes, and I'll wear my Weechel clothing, I think, one of the dresses and the headdresses, and I like wearing the clothes when I'm talking about the culture. All right, we're down to 50 seconds.
Yes, and we've got somebody from Brazil. So we have people all over the world who are tuning in. And we're going to be starting momentarily.
This is a very nice display too, with your symbol.
Isn't that nice? I designed that. I did all the programming of that animated rainbow yin yang.
It's beautiful. Well, we'll see what my son comes up with. He did the music, so he'll do the music for me too.
How nice. Okay, we're about to go live in 10 seconds.
Okay, watch that.
Well, we are live. We're about to start the program. Here we go. There we are. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. I'm here with Gail Hayssen. We're going to be sharing all kinds of things with you for the next 90 minutes. We're going to be taking your questions. We're very happy to have you join us. We scheduled it at this hour so that some of Gail's friends and shaman people from Mongolia may actually be at least tune in to our live stream broadcast. But I think it's important to begin by setting the stage. And I know, Gail, you were telling me earlier, this is a very emotional time for you because you have a person you've been close with for 3 years, even though you have never met him face to face, who at this very moment is dying.
He's transitioning and in a peaceful state, but not in a state of being able to speak or that type of consciousness now. And I've heard this from his daughter, who hears it from the hospital, because as you know, during COVID, it's nearly impossible to be with someone when they're in the hospital now. And I just want to say that I've learned so much from this man and how connection can happen on such a deep level, even when we physically have never touched each other or seen each other. And I actually never even had a photograph of who I was talking to until his daughter sent me one yesterday. And this wonderful man, Hugh Trolson, has spent his last years doing a lot of spiritual work. And he spoke to me a few days before entering the hospital on Monday to tell me that he was very at peace with his, is the end of his life, and that he could go in a peaceful manner and knowing that he'd done in the best of everything he could. And it was such a beautiful thing to share this deep, intimate moment with someone who our conversations have only been on a phone. He wasn't in the modern world with an iPhone, or I couldn't call him on a computer and do a Zoom with him. So it was only on your old landline. And he sent me so many different printouts in the mail of things about conspiracy theories and things about love and forgiveness and channels and places he thought I should have talks with people and shows I should be on. And in fact, the last show I was on before this, a few days ago, was the one that he had connected me to be on. And so I can't speak enough about how I didn't realize you could get this deeply connected to someone by only sharing your words with each other, but really speaking from the heart, even though there was never a physical hug or a handshake or a touch like that. And so what I was hoping to do right now is, I'm excited to be on the show. I do have tissues here in case there's any little emotional things. I'm an emotional person, but it's not on any bad or negative way. It's just that I feel a lot. And what I'd like to share before we start our questions is a poem that he sent to me for New Year's Eve. And then we can move from there. But you, wherever you are transitioning now, I just want you to know, I know you're surrounded in angels and love and light, because that's the being that he is. his poem. What will you do in 2022? This was a New Year's card. What will you do in 2022? Understand that there are only two types of energies available to you. Negative and positive are the energies at play, so choose wisely each and every day. Negative energies deal in hate and blame, and that will bring you only shame. Positive energy deals in love and light, and that will bring you delight. What you think about, you bring about. So use your free will to manifest a better world, not just for you, but also for others in this world too. Forgiveness, love, and prayer are words to guide you as you choose. So again, choose wisely, and may God bless you. Happy New Year.
Well, that was lovely. And it also speaks to the fact that you, Gail Hayssen, it's it's pronounced Hayssen. Many people say
Yeah.
Hayssen. I've been mispronouncing your name for all these programs.
It's okay. I just like, okay.
Hayssen, Gail Hayssen, you are one of the most open-hearted people I have ever known in my life. And I think that has a lot to do with how your life has taken you to be here with me now and to have done all this amazing work that you've done in the area of shamanism and in the area of remote viewing. So I'll start in now with some of the questions. This is from a person named, people on YouTube can use names. I don't know if this is an actual name or a YouTube name. Geniix May, who is asking about remote viewing and shamanism and how are they related? She's saying, or he is saying, is remote viewing a kind of shamanistic talent, or is it something separate?
Well, I think that remote viewing, in the idea that we're saying we're going to another place, this is something that shamans are using when they're going to, say, maybe retrieve something that they feel would be an energy that could heal you, or they're doing things remotely, but I don't feel like it's the same thing like remote viewing, because I feel like the shamanism thing has to do with dealing with the spirit and the spirits of nature, animals, objects, things that give you information. With remote viewing, there are so many people who have been taught remote viewing, so they actually follow a specific form that they're doing, or way in their mind that they approach the remote viewing. And it's mostly often been to describe a target, and the target might be symbolic of something else, but the part of accessing information to me is the same thing, but the method or what they're using and doing it for are two different things entirely.
Okay. And now I've got a question from Johnny Panreich, or Panricky. I forgive me, Johnny, if I'm mispronouncing your name. His question is, do you have experiences of shamanistic practices being applied to lift people out of substance abuse or substance dependence on alcohol or anything similar?
Well, I could share a story about that. It's not my personal shamanic story. Mostly the things I've done with people have been around the areas of death and losing someone and that more of those kind of things. But I did see actual results of shamanic work on alcoholism. And what it was we had this, I have to say, of all the shamans, she was the youngest shaman who'd ever come to my home. She was 28 years old at the time. And she was also the most beautiful shaman I had ever seen, like a model, kind of strikingly beautiful. So when she turned into her spirit of, I think it was an old man, I'm not sure. It's amazing to see the transformation of this young, beautiful person become this wise old shaman man, like like transform into this. And we had a gathering here for only Mongolian people that lived in the Bay Area. And they were coming up to get healings with her because they don't have a Mongolian shaman living in Berkeley necessarily. So when one comes in from Mongolia, the word gets out. And I offered my place as a place for her to do this, shamanic work with all these people. And they came, and this one particular man, I was told later what it was all about. These aren't, I'm giving translation information after the fact of watching what was going on. And she had done, and they explained it to me, because when I was watching, I was a little bit worried for the person, but she did intensive whipping and on this large Mongolian man. And wasn't like he sat there taking every single, whipping that she was doing with him. And it was very intense. I'm not going to go into the full details, but I was watching and watching. And then one of the people said to me, she's doing this because he has been not a good person. He has been an alcoholic, and he has been drinking too much, and he has lost control of the alcohol. And she said he's doing this to get the negative energy of the alcoholism out of his body and shed him of this negativity. Well, it was an intense process, and it involved, I think there was maybe even some weeping, I'm not sure, but there was a lot that went on, and you could see he was going through a lot of letting go of a lot of emotion. And when I spoke to the same group of people sometime later, many months down the road, because I was invited to a wedding of one of the people that were here. And when I went to this Mongolian wedding, I found out that this gentleman, who I think was also at the wedding, was as happy and healthy as can be, and had never touched alcohol since that experience up here at my house. So I want to say I've seen that happen. I myself have never done that kind of thing with anyone, but I see and heard the results. And I know there was nothing, I know this man stopped alcoholism like that. I hope that answers the question.
Very interesting. Well, it's a deep question, and I'm sure there are many other techniques as well, because every shaman seems to approach things in a unique way. Like this particular shaman that you work with uses the whip. Probably many shamans never use a whip.
Well, I've only seen two that used the whip. So the shaman who initiated me, Zagda, and this beautiful young shaman, I can't pronounce her name at all, so we just call her Honey.
Here's a question from Buddy Balder, who asked, can anyone become a shaman?
I don't know. I want to say I don't think so, but it's not, I think there are courses and things. I guess it depends what kind of shaman we're talking about here. If we're talking about a shaman that goes to like Michael Harner's shamanic course, which is over a few-year period, and you go through intensive training, I think that you can be trained to learn different techniques to become a shaman. I think in that sense, yes, anyone could become a shaman if they were to attend some sort of a, like that's the only course I know of that I can actually recommend or speak about. But I have never, it was not something that I thought in myself, I would love to become a shaman. How can I do this? For me, it was an unfolding of events over a 10-year period that brought that whole shamanistic experience into my life and turned me into a shaman. So for me, I would say that that was a different approach. And I did not attend courses or this sort of thing. It was like a transference of information, because we don't speak the same language. And there are a lot of people that sell things out there for, come and study with them and you'll become a shaman this or shaman that. I can't speak on any of those, whether they're really valid or not. I don't know, because I've never attended them. I have no idea.
Well, I do recall speaking about shamanism with Stanley Krippner, who I know is a good friend of yours and has studied shamans for many, many decades. And he made a point of explaining to me that to really be a shaman, you have to be accepted by the community you're working with as a shaman. That shamans are not really separated from their communities. And so in a way, you could say it's up to each community.
Exactly. When we discuss our Weechol show, we're going to find out what their requirements are of shaman training. And it's much different than, say, another culture's amount of time or what's required to become a shaman. I think, I'm not sure, but I'll have more accurate information, but I think it's a 20-year process that in their community, you're not accepted and respected as a shaman until you've gone through many, many years of training with other shamans and done a lot of shamanic, work, whether it's, I'm not sure what the work is involved in that culture. In the Mongolian culture, I'm not sure exactly. I believe that there are schools there where people go and study to become a shaman with different shaman, whether it's a tuva or Mongolians themselves. I don't know about outsiders going there and becoming a shaman in their community, but the people in the community. And as we talked about in one of our shows, in Mongolia, they honor the shamans. And when they have their Nadam festival every July, honoring the times and the games of Genghis Khan, the shamans are all honored at the same time. And one representative is sent from each different group, from the Buryat, the one that I was initiated in, the Darkhat. It's very hard for me to pronounce their names. The Khalkha. The one person will be chosen out of all the different Mongolian shamans that have been trained in that area, and they will be then sent to represent each one.
Here's a question from Erlin, or maybe it's Earlin. In the shamanic tradition in which you were trained, what is the understanding of the human soul or the composition of a human being?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know because I was trained telepathically and not with any words. But I'm happy to write his question down or have you send it to me, and I will definitely ask and get an answer for that person.
Okay, that's a very generous offer. It's fine to say you don't know, but Erlin can reach out to me through friends at New Thinking Aloud, and I'll pass his message on, or he can probably contact you through your website.
Exactly, and I'll be more than happy to answer him by speaking to my shamans in Mongolia, who will ask someone that speaks English to answer for me.
Very good. Okay, so here's a question from Jessica Pacheco. Is being bipolar, is that in any way a part of or in relationship to shamanic waking?
I don't know. Bipolar is a new word for me in the psychology world. I'm not sure if it's the same thing as being a schizophrenic, if that's a similar, so I'm not sure what the full definition of bipolar means. I thought schizophrenia meant that the person was of two. I'm not sure the answer to that. I just know that some people who have been labeled schizophrenic or bipolar or some of these things are actually, some of the people really are dealing with the fact that they're more open to spirit and other dimensions, but the people that they're dealing with don't understand it, so they get labeled that way. I know I was labeled that way as a schizophrenic when I was a teenager, because I told them that I heard voices and I saw things that were in the invisible. So I don't think I'm a schizophrenic by any means, and I was glad I got out of that teenage therapy, but I do think that there's some misdiagnoses in people because they're having spiritual things, not mental issues.
Yeah, one of the problems, of course, is that these are just labels. They're just words, and they'll be used differently by different people in different contexts and even in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question from Andrei Slavosh Krasowski, who asks, how do you deal with skeptics or scoffers? I mean, people who claim that what you do is nothing but superstitious nonsense. Do you ever get angry with them or go through such situations peacefully?
I think I date back to the first, do you remember? I don't think he's with us anymore. I'm not sure. The Amazing Randy, they called him. And he was considered like the skeptic during the remote viewing and these sort of things. So I know he skeptic to me on some of the stuff that I was involved in at Ions and with Dean Radin and Russell Targ. And he was writing some skeptical things about all that. I didn't find it at all making me feel angry or anything like this. I thought it was great for someone to present another point of view. What I think what angers me more is actually the opposite. People claiming to be, people that prey on people's emotions and losses to make money for themselves by saying, oh yes, I can speak to your dead father and I'll let you know what he says. And they get sort of, they want, the person wants relief so badly. And there's always these con artist types out there that prey on those kind of people. So that would be something that would anger me. But skeptics, it's, as Dean told my daughter, because she was always very skeptical about whether her mother was psychic or not, Dean said to her, that's a very good quality to have because it means you're open and thinking and you're not accepting everything that's being said to you. So I think, there's a positiveness of skepticness. But when people say, I was called those things when I was a teenager and doing medical diagnosis on stage. So back then they were making fun of me, and some members of my family made fun of me. And so I really had to deal with that way back then. So by this point in life, there's those things just, roll off like water off a duck's back. I know from my own inner strength who I am, and it really doesn't matter if these other people, I don't appreciate negative things being said or being told, oh, that's all crazy nonsense. I just appreciate being able to offer whatever it is that I can with another person when I'm doing a shamanic thing with them.
And we have a question from Druon Nicholson, who asks, are shamans using PK or psychokinetic abilities?
I don't know the answer to that, but when I've seen some of the shamans working with fire and things like this of this nature, or the amazing amount of energy and strength that could come from, and some of them are in their, could be their late 60s or whatever, which, I'm getting close to that too, but the amount of energy that they're able to exhibit shows me that they are then working with a different force than your regular nature. But I don't know that's exactly PK. You're the professional when it comes to the PK. That you're the PK person. But so I wouldn't be able to say that I actually saw anything flying through the air or any of this sort of thing. But I do believe that if there's PK in people walking around in Katati, I'm sure that there's PK amongst shamanisms.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. And Druan also asks, about the PK man. And he, for example, in the research I conducted with this individual named Ted Owens that ran from 1976 until he died in 1987, one of the things he was very good at was working with the weather. And so many of his demonstrations had to do with creating rain to alleviate droughts. Now, isn't that something shamans do?
Now that I saw happening, I don't see, that's why you need to explain the PK. I'm only thinking of them saying, okay, I'm going to move this fork or something. Yes, not only that, but why there was a shaman fight over it, because we're in the Gair. This was in the first visit I went to Mongolia when I spoke at the first conference. I think Spirits in the Drum or something was the name of it. And there were different shamans there. And there was this older, amazing, gentle, sweet shaman that I have photos of him I sent with you, with a long white beard. And he was just such a beautiful man. And he was doing something or other. I don't know if it was a singing or a drumming or something. And the rain started to come down. And Zor's Batar got all angry because we're having this conference and we're on a hillside and you really don't want it to be raining right then. And he's all angry and telling the shaman, it's because of you. That song you just did was the one that calls the rain. So now we've got rain. Now we got to do the calling of the stopping of the rain. So then there was a whole thing that went on. And then the Zor's Batar shaman did some other thing. And sure enough, the rain stopped. So one shaman started the rain, one shaman stopped the rain. These things I'm sharing are experiences that I saw with my own eyes. If that's what's called PK, yes, that I definitely saw that.
Okay.
And they were intended in that. It wasn't like an accident. They were intentionally saying, I'm going to stop the rain right now. The other man didn't mean to, but apparently his song was the kind that causes the rain to come.
Eduardo Mendoza asks, what do you think is the place of shamanism today?
For me, I have to say Mongolia, because I have never seen, shamans, honored and, represented in a country where they'd been repressed for so long and still kept, some of these shamans are sixth generation. So for me, they're like the oldest shamans in the world, and they have held on all these years and all these centuries. I don't know any Native American shamans. I know shamans from Peru, Russia, in Alaska. Well, I don't know if they were shamans, but so I've met, and in the Huichol culture, I've met shamans from the Hmong shamans from Laos, and I've met all these many shamans from Ruth Inga Hines' Shaman Conference. But so I haven't been to places in Asia to be able to say whether that's the shaman place. But for what I've seen and where I've traveled, Mongolia is, and I think that the things and certain things in the language and stuff, they find in Native American Indians, shamans here, using tools or things or song or words that they can compare to originating from Mongolia. So I think that Mongolia spread shamanism way back, a long time ago. Those reindeer shamans we spoke about that live across the mountain on Lake Kovskol in Mongolia, they all live in teepees and have lived in teepees forever. Maybe some of them traveled across the Bering Strait or wherever and came down into North America, whatever happened, and somehow teepees were brought here. I don't know, but I know their culture is much older than, say, the teepees that we've discovered here. I believe it's much older in Mongolia.
Now, I suspect that Eduardo might have been asking a little different question. Rather than the geographic place, I think maybe Eduardo meant something like, what do you think, what role is shamanism going to have here in the United States?
Well, it seems to be becoming popular lately. Have you noticed that? And that, when I was involved in this, starting, 20 years ago or somewhere, whatever, I went to my first conference with Ruth Inga, but I had already gone and done healings with shamans in the Huichol Mountains of Mexico in the late 90s. So, and back then it didn't seem as popular, or I don't know what the mainstream, I don't know, where now it seems much more out in the public, and it also seems like everybody's a shaman all of a sudden. I don't know, or everybody's a healer, everybody's a shaman. I don't know. So I'm just saying, I don't know if I were to say who was the most open about sharing shamanic information in the United States, it would be, going to Michael Harner's shamanic courses. But if it were to be like, could you study with incredible shamans? I found the Mongolian shamans to be very open about sharing their information. In the middle of the night, I had this amazing professor who was also a shaman historian and amazing professor in Mongolia who was staying here. And in the middle of the night, he just came in my room, turned on the lights, and all of a sudden we were going to learn all about how they hold the drum and how it's done. There were actual courses like this in Mongolia where people could study the entire way. For me, I'm not a good student. I'm a much better experience, observing sponge kind of person. That's how I learn better. So when I asked them about the lessons he had given me about the motion and how you're moving the drum in the room as you're playing the drum, they said, we don't need to tell you anything. He transferred all the information to you. So I don't know what to say, because I didn't apply to take any training and I didn't know that I was going to do this, but this is the kind of life I live. Most people make plans, I don't, but but I'm just saying that. And I think that the beginning person should always read the book, The Way of the Shaman by Michael Harner.
Okay, here's a question from Ron Thomas. Is the ability to manifest desired outcomes, is that a shamanic skill?
I have always had that skill, so I don't know. I brought that into my shamanic experience already, manifesting. And I don't know why or how. It's nothing I intended, but I'm not sure. I have some strange experience with being able to manifest things or material items by focusing attention on it, and somehow these things manifest. I don't know what the shamans are doing with that. I just know that that's a tool that I've always just had available to me.
Okay. And here's a question from Nate Grossman. What do you do to enter an altered state of consciousness in your shamanic practice?
Well, for me, I'm trying to experience, say, a deceased person's spirit when they're here at my house and we're doing a shamanic thing together. What happens for me is that when I play this little jaw harp, it connects me to some type of spiritual energy or other spirit. It somehow puts me into a place of, it's like that's where my brain and regular thought sort of steps out of the way. And the sound of this jaw harp brings me into an altered state. To be in an intense out of body altered state, that I experienced when I was initiated. And that was many hours of chanting, dancing, and playing the jaw harp. And it was a very there's no question, because we have a photo that shows how it is to look when you've completely surrendered and you're out of, you're out in the other realms. That would be the best way. And for me also is, it's really just of having my intellect, or whatever you want to call the brain things, to step to the side and let the other information and the other experience come through.
Here is a question from Mystic Gnome. Through childhood, is it common for those that are shamans to be attacked at night, psychic attacks, chronic insomnia, hallucinations, etc.?
Okay, I'm not anybody's world expert on shamanism here. I hope they have some other questions too, but I can tell you that when I have spoken to different people, it seems that a shaman has had a little bit of a harder path often in life as they're growing. It may be a terrible sickness that they go through where they nearly die. It could be some sort of thing like you're saying, where they see in the night, in darkness, they may see negative energies and things like this as a kid growing. I do think that from what I've spoken to from some of the shamans I've known, the path isn't like an easy path of their life as they're growing. It comes with a lot of teaching, whether it's physical or mental, or, but there have been places in their body or soul that have been pushed to different points.
Very good. And here's an interesting question from Sylvia Ruiz. Do your children follow your teachings and healings?
Oh, my children. Children are always your best reporters or whatever. And I can tell you this, because I have 3 children and they're all adults. So my children had to grow up here in the house with me bringing all these shamans home. So they have participated and sat there through ceremonies. They've made fun of some of the shamans I've brought here. They've told me which one is their favorite shaman, which one's their least favorite shaman. They've brought their friends over and sat at my kitchen table, and all teenagers making power tools that they've never done in their life. But I had a woman from Australia, a medicine woman, come, and even though they're making fun, they're all sitting there making a rattle. So I have to say it's a mixed kind of thing. Yes, they participate, but yes, they're my children and they're going to make fun of me at the same time. The other part is I've had shamanic experiences with them, or psychic experiences with them. So can I elaborate on the 3 as an experience? So my daughter, Nancy, she was home here, and I was in the mountains of Mexico with the Huichol Indians. And I had just been asked to be a driver for them. I think she was about 10 years old. I was asked to be a driver for them to take them, the Peyoteros men, to San Luis Potosi, which is where they go. It's hundreds of miles away from where we are, and it's where they go to pick the peyote. And nowadays you can't even do that, because if a white person's face is seen there, they'll be arrested. You are not allowed to even go to these sacred place anymore to pick the peyote. But back then I would have been allowed to go at that time. So it was a very big honor, and I was just thrilled that I was going to go drive these, group of shamans and peyoteros to go pick peyote in San Luis Potosi. But that night I had this horrendous dream that my daughter Nancy was going to be very ill and I needed to go home immediately. I got to a switchboard, because in those days there was only switchboards to get a phone call through in the nearest town after you come out of the mountain. And I waited all day for this call to go through. And my husband says, no, Nancy's fine. Everything's fine. There's no problem. Stay, go enjoy yourself. I said, I can't. I said, I feel so intense that something's going to happen. I have to come home now. it took another couple days to get me to the airport and get all my, to get out of there. And I think 2 days later, they were picking me up in San Francisco airport. My husband came, my daughter came. They got me. I put my stuff in the car. She lay down in the back seat, and then she started to proceed to get sick. By the time we got home, she was complaining about pains in her stomach, and we thought she had some kind of flu. And we called the doctor, and they said, well, touch her here or there. And we did. They said, oh, well, she didn't respond. It's not appendix, so don't worry about it. And then another day or two more passed, and it looked like she was going downhill. And my husband rushed her into a doctor, and they put her into a hospital immediately. And as they cut her open, her appendix burst in his hands. And there was so much infection in there, he said he could fill a soda can with what was coming out of her. And I got to be there because I followed my dream. And I believe dream is a part of shamanism too, because dreams is where we do work and where we get information. And I am so grateful that I was listening to what I felt in my gut from my dream and not listening to the actual facts that everybody was fine and there was no worry, because I would have been completely out of touch with them for almost a week, not able to be reached by phone when all that would have happened. So they've experienced that firsthand. Mom has a dream, they've seen enough of these things, but they'll still always make fun of me. My son went with me to do an exorcism in a house in Chicago. And I was a Reiki master then. And so I had all been trained in all symbols of using symbols in my hands. And I had already started some, Mongolian shaman things. And so I went there to cleanse this house that I had been to many years before and got freaked out by the ghosts or whatever the entity is that was in that house, scared the shit out of me. I ran out of that place. I wouldn't sleep there again, ever. So I returned to the scene of the crime 10, 12 years later, and I bring my son with me. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then we get to the 4th floor where I had felt that experience that many years earlier, and my hair stands on end on my arms. And he's holding on to me, feeling everything like I feel. So my son and I are very in tune this way. And he knew the same feeling I got of that there's negative energy here. Though other people came to the house, slept there for 12 years, people came and went. Nobody had this experience in the room, except for one other friend of mine. And so that night he had me lay with him until he went to sleep. And then he went out, and I did it took me about 2 hours to cleanse this home from top to bottom, every window and door, and to ask whatever this energy was to please leave, to please leave. That afternoon, evening, when he came back in, he just opened the door, and my son said, my mom did something. I can feel it. There's something different in this house. So he's always supported and respected me that way. And, he's right there. It's not like he's questioning it or feeling skeptical. He's feeling it too. And the other interesting part about that was these people had been trying to sell the house for almost 2 years, and they had not gotten one offer. And after I did the cleansing, 2 days later, a realtor brought in another couple, and they bought the house. It was sold for 2.6 million. And this was back in the, when that was a lot more money, on Lake Michigan and, Highland Park there. And so he saw me in action, so to speak, or something. Do you know what I mean? Then my last one, that's my skeptic. She's skeptical about. And by the way, I used to tell my children as they're growing up things about boyfriends or girlfriends that they'd be saying, how did you know that? I said, oh, and the mother drives a BMW, and the son's like, how did you know that? I said, what do you mean, how did I know that? I just know. But one day I said to my son, oh, you've done this today, didn't you? He just like blown away that they would know that I would know these intimate things. Well, my last daughter, Tasha, who's going to be 26 next week, and my youngest child, she had some kind of bizarre thing that happened to her, and we don't know what it is, But if I look at it now, I think that some kind of entity or some kind of negative something entered into her young little child body. And she got very sick. And when we kept bringing her to the hospital, they couldn't find out anything wrong with her. And she was like starting to waste away and get kind of almost gray in color. And this went on for like a couple of weeks where she wouldn't eat. She would just sort of sit there in the front of the TV, just like listless, like she was like not there. And I'm getting more scared and more scared and more worrying. And we've taken her to doctors and we've done all these things and nothing is happening. And then one day, she's sitting there on the couch like that. And something comes over me, which I can now say was shamanic, energetic, from a place in deep in a well. That's nothing to do with the regular Gail. And I love my children. I don't scream at them. I picked her body up and with I don't know what was in me, but there was like this force in me. And I took her outside and the winds came up like powerful winds, like you would not believe. And I started screaming in her face, "You are going to die. If you do not get out, whatever's in here, get out of your body. I want you back. I want my Tasha back. Get this stuff out." Screaming, and the wind is like it's like a movie set. And then I carry her back in the house. And within an hour after this experience, she says, "Oh, I want some food, Mom. Oh, let's do this, Mom." She came completely back as Tasha again. And my niece Valerie came over and she said, "What happened to Tasha?" I mean, everybody saw there was this complete change. Whether it was coincidental, whether I can't answer exactly that, but to me, it was a shamanic removal of something that was not a physical disease inside of her. That would be my take on this. Other people might say medical this or whatever, I don't know. And it so affected my niece when she saw this change, because she lived on my property, that a year later, when I was going to New York, she said, "When you go there, could you go see my boyfriend's sister? She came back from the Appalachian Mountains. She's very sick. They can't find out what's wrong with her. She's stuck there. I just know if you could just do what you did to Tasha, just go and do it there." And I wasn't sure what that was either, but she sent me on this mission. So my husband, David, we were in New York, and then he said, "I think it's time we go to New Jersey to see that girl that to see what you could do for her." And with the whole way he's driving the car and I'm saying, "What can I do for someone? I don't know anything about these things. I can't help a strange person I've never met with their problem." But sure enough, we walked into this townhouse in New Jersey to this lovely, beautiful girl. And it was just like what happened with Tasha, where some other energy comes into me and takes over. And I'm yelling at this girl at the top of my lungs, "You got to do this. You got to do that. You can't be like this anymore." Blah, 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 blah. It was some impact. And at the end, David and I just embraced her when we left. And we knew something had shifted. Her parents sent me a thank you letter. She was able to get onto the plan to get healthy again and to move on and get back into her life. She's now married. She lives with a wonderful man in Colorado, and she lives a happy life. But something happened, and that I would consider also like a shamanic removal. I don't know what the word is. I just know what the results are after.
Well, that question about your children really.
Sorry,
Don't be sorry. That was wonderful.
So I believe they, they think their mom is whatever, you know what I mean?
Well, here's an interesting question from James Sheffer. He says, if we look back over the life of a shaman, is it recognized as something that came with the incarnation, and that training only works because the person is, you could say, born to be a shaman?
Okay. Now, I want to say in the Mongolian culture, there are generations of shamans, and it's recognized, I believe, that the child will become a shaman. I'm not exactly sure. So this is, their history. And I just know when I was there, I would meet shamans that would say their father was a shaman or their mother was a shaman, and so they would have a whole ancestral line of shamanism in their family. My own personal experience was the reason I was initiated as a shaman was because Zagda said she saw spirits all around me, and that I was, like I needed to be initiated into the shaman, as a white shaman, a shaman of healing. And it was her vision of seeing spirits that made her feel I was supposed to become this shaman. I've also was told by a very famous scientist in Mongolia that I held the energy of the Genghis Khan shamanism bloodline, and that I truly carried shamanism in me. This is not something I would have ever said about myself or anything, but I have to say that since I was initiated, I felt that this honor of wearing these clothing and using these tools was like one of the most highest points of feeling like I was being seen and validated in my life.
Okay, here's a question from an individual named John Furs. Have you encountered reticence or refusal from shamans who don't want to share their traditions with outsiders or with Westerners?
The only time I experienced that was more with Native American shamans, where maybe you're in a ceremony or something. And I remember there were certain different things when I was meeting some of the ones here where, like if a woman had her period, she couldn't be in front of the shaman then, because that was where she should be separated and sent away. But I have never been embraced or offered or opened up into the Native American shamanism or people of that here in the United States. It's my openness and teachings from other shamans have been from cultures in other places in the world. So, and they've been very, but I think that, I'm not judging in any way. I'm just saying that's been my experience, that's a very hard group to be able to enter in as a white blonde, well, not blonde anymore, but a white gray lady.
Mary Hitchcock asks, how do shamans spend their workaday hours of the week? Do they spend it in administration of upcoming events or meditation? And do they have a staff or circle of colleagues?
So remember now, we're talking about many different shamans. And, if anyone wants to switch to child abuse, feel free. But we're speaking about, shamans in Mongolia, shamans in the Huichol. These are the two that I feel the intimate and most closeness of experiences with. I'm sorry, repeat the question.
It's how do the shamans spend their days?
Okay. So I would say that has to depend on the shaman. And that would also be depending in which culture, because some shamans, like like Zagda, she's speaking in places around the world. She's doing things, with people, continually training students. She's somebody that when she came here to the United States, it was from one shamanic ceremony and blessing to go to the next, to do the next one. She was working very hard. Another shaman may be a shaman who's only doing that on occasion, or like for me, it's only when someone comes to me and asks for that. Then that's my experience. They come to my house and we have this thing, or I might be traveling to somewhere and I take some of my shamanic things with me, and I'm in New York and I'm with someone who's not well or something, and I'll do some sort of little blessing there with them. There are shamans there where it's like Zagda, I think it's probably almost a full-time job. Then there are shamans like the ones that are the professors, where they're writing books and papers and research and doing their shamanic work and, holding a job in a university and, traveling to other countries. So I would say the degree depends on what the person is, who they are. In the Huichol culture, those shamans have to also till the soil and plant the corn and, grow food. They can't just be a shaman. They've got to feed their families. So they are doing their shamanic work, but I'm also seeing them go off to, tend cows or take care of things that they have to survive in the place where they're living. So I don't think for them it's and also it has to be with the respect that you have from the community. That if the community feels some shamans, they are not respected because they've done maybe negative energy to other people. And the people in the community know that shaman did that to their friend or that person, and they experience a bad leg or something happens to them. They have a different feeling about that shaman. Then there's the shaman there in the Huichol who his job is to always sing and do blessings when you're like moving into a new home or starting something. So he would be called on maybe at different amounts of times. But I don't know, except for Zagda, I don't know, that other shamans are doing that as a full 24/7 surviving in the world way of living. I think there's usually always having to be some other thing that's your bread and butter.
Interesting question from Lily Gazoo, who is asking about you, Gail. What are you going to travel and teach? How do you plan to manifest in the world as a shaman? You mentioned that if people reach out to you for help, you try to help them, but anything over and above that?
Well, this starting in September of launching this podcast that I'm doing. My whole purpose in this podcast is at each show, if just one person gets some sort of healing or information that helps them on their path, then we've done some sharing and good work. If more people get a good experience, even better. But that's what I would say is in my future, is that I'm trying to share stories so that people can feel comfortable to share their stories, whether it's death, paranormal, psychic, shamanic, whatever it is. It's the fact that we have dialogue, like what you've been doing for the last 30 years. I'm just doing it in a very small way, but I'm finding that it is connecting me to amazingly wonderful people that are also helping me on my journey and my path. So it feels like a give and take in both ways. And so that would be, that's part of what I'm doing right now. And then I'm also planning whether it's accepted by a publisher where my book is right now, or whether I end up going to self-publishing, but that this is the year that a small, medium, at large book will come out in some form, so that I can share my full different selections of stories for anyone who might want to read and and maybe forgive somebody in their family for some kind of abuse or things that they've experienced. It's hard to know how you can hit a person in their heart or their soul. I only know that whenever I'm sharing things, I'm trying to be as authentic and from my heart as I can be. And, we all make mistakes or say the wrong word or whatever, but our intention is all coming from a good place.
Here's a question from Brett Bernhoft about, and I think you already answered it in part, about how can shamans of today integrate modern technologies into their practice?
Well, I can't say that I initiated any modern technology into my practice, but I can tell you I used modern technology to do some shamanic work. And I was shocked how well it worked. Because all of the things that I've always done is with a person right there with me, and I'm in my shamanic clothing. Other things I've done, what I call distant healing. And I've done that way before I was ever a shaman. So when I've have friends or people I know that are ill or readying for passing, like my friend today, Hugh Trolson, I try to connect to them on a spirit level and try to be there for them. And that's something that I've always, felt a kinship to always to be able to, separate from your body and connect to the spirit of a person and send them as much healing or positive energy as you can to help them through their journey, whichever it is. Well, I had a friend that was leaving her home after 35 years, and she had lost both her husband and her daughter to suicide there. And I'd known her since I was 5 or 6 years old, but we hadn't seen each other that often through the years. But we got together on our 60th and had, a whole little group of us together. So I wasn't sure how close I could connect into her because she's on the East Coast, I'm in the West Coast. But I wanted to help her cleanse this house before she shut the door on her final leaving of the place, of all the energies and the experiences of losing your husband and your child in this home, in the actual home itself. And it was a powerful experience with a cell phone and what do you call it? The FaceTime thing where you could see the person at the same time. So I put the phone on a tripod and I put on all my shamanic clothing, and I have a place in my room that's, I guess in the old days would be called a dorma or a dorm, where it's a little extension out of your house. It's like where the window is and it just kind of juts out a little. And that's all covered in all my shamanic things. And it's like 2 sides and the window. And I have everything hanging there and all my drums and all my chatags and all my special things. And I sat in there and faced the camera. And she went with her phone into every room in her house. And as we would go into each room, I'd had her carry a candle and I did a, jaw harping and drumming. And at each room, I would experiencing things, even though I had never been to her house and I had never even met her daughter, who was 19 when she passed. I was there and I was able to tell her things that went on in the rooms itself and actually transform into feeling her beautiful daughter. And I only came up with a few statements and they were exactly part of the personality of her child. And when I came up with the things with her husband, it was such a loving and beautiful experience. And an hour and a half later, when we finished, she said, "Oh my God, the buyers are moving in 10 minutes. I thought we would be done." We both thought it was 5 minutes, because when you go into that realm, there is no time. It is a timeless place, which I would then akin say is similar to remote viewing. Because when I'm in remote viewing, I feel like there is no time. And I feel the same way when I'm doing shamanic work like that. So technology assisted me in being able to do this with her together. And I never even knew whether that could possibly happen like that. But it was very healing for her. It was a very teaching for me. And it was a beautiful experience. I hope that answers the question.
That was a wonderful story that did answer the question. And I should mention we're very close to the top of the hour, 2 minutes after the top of the hour. We're going to go for until the bottom of the hour, another 28 minutes. Here's a question from Ben Vinar. Can the spirits alone train me in shamanism? He says he's between the first and second world, whatever he meant by that. So I'm still pretty clueless. I guess that's what he means.
When I asked Handa how to play this jaw harp, she said, "You just keep playing it. There's nothing to be taught. The spirits will show you." And I came out with another sound and I didn't know where it came from. And she said, that comes from the spirits. That's how they're teaching you. So I would answer that way. I can't say what this gentleman, or I think it's a man, is experiencing, but to me, if you're having positive, good energy spirits guiding you, what couldn't be better than that? I mean, that's a fabulous teacher. And to say whether it's a certain type of shamanism, I can't answer that. I don't know. As you know, if you want to be a Huichol shaman, you have 20 years of hard work to be able to get to that place. So it would really depend on which culture would say whether that you could do that on your own. I would think a teacher would be a good assistant in that.
Here's a question from Kylie, who says, occasionally I see fast-moving black orbs enter people or buildings. Being so dark, are these negative spirits? Is color indicative of positive or negative?
Well, again, I'm not the foremost knowledgeable person on shamanism, but experientially, I've had wonderful experiences. And when it comes to that darkness that they're speaking about, I have seen that. And for me, it was how I was told that there were sicknesses in people's bodies. When there was a sick liver or a damaged lung, it would always appear to me with blackness around the organ. So in my experience, those kind of black things when I'm searching were usually pointing out that there was sickness there, which I would consider sort of a negative thing. When I've had some experiences where I felt like I had negative energy following me, or feeling like I had spoken about a story in Mongolia, it felt like a dark mass. So I can't answer what other shamans would say, but that has been my personal experience. And that the thing is, when you become much stronger, you don't need to have fear around that darkness, because you have your inner strength, but you have to acknowledge that darkness, that it's there. So he may want to say to any of those, I acknowledge that your presence is there, and now I would like you to leave and take your negativity and, leave my space or my body or my energy.
Here's a question from a person who I think is asking for healing, Rohit Singh, who says, I always have sleep paralysis, possession by demonic beings in my dreams. What can I do?
Well, I have had that happen a few times, and it can be an incredibly frightening, scary experience. And I want to say that there are certain things you could do to just the same thing, where you visually and verbally say out loud and wake up during that night of that dream and say, I don't want you here anymore. I don't want these dreams anymore. I need to move on to a more positive and helpful dreamlike state, not one that's taking me through all of this negativity. This person may need to go see a shaman or a healer or someone to maybe give him assistance and help to rid this out of him. He may also find that there are certain things that he could put in his room when he goes to sleep at night that can protect him from these things, whether it's a candle burning or, a special small little light, or certain things, flowers, or things that make him feel protected and comforted, so that in his room, he's creating not exactly, he might make a little altar in the room and have this altar set up where he puts things there to protect him if he's into Christianity or whatever religious things, or, if he wants a cross or a Star of David or any of those kind of objects that he would feel could help also to protect him. And then also he could try, going to sleep with, maybe some really beautiful music or things, real positive kind of energy. And he should not have dreams like that every night. That we're not meant to be doing that. There's something there he needs to be working on.
Okay. Bob Jones asks, is there any lore about shamans becoming evil in the same way that the North American medicine men become skinwalkers? I recently did a whole program about skinwalkers, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term.
No, can you, I've only heard it in a song by Robbie Robertson, I think. What is the definition of it?
Well, there was a lot of research about a ranch in Utah called Skinwalker Ranch, and it had to do with a legend of the Native Americans, the Utes and the Navajo, that shamans can become evil. Let's just put it that way, and do bad things, leave their bodies. And I mean, I suppose another word for it is simply sorcery.
Okay, so what is the question? Is that real, or what is the question?
Is the question, the way it was worded here by Bob Jones, is there lore about, do shamans sometimes become evil?
Now that question I can answer. The law question I can't. I don't know the answer to that. But what I can answer is my own personal experience and an experience of my dear friend Julio. Julio's name in Huichol, of course I can't pronounce it, but it means honey, because he was born with a sweetness that was recognized in his community when he was a little boy and carried on into his life into his 60s. So when I tell you he is one of the kindest, sweetest men I have ever met in my life, he is illiterate, he doesn't, read or write, but he has a heart and a soul of a very pure being. And by the way, when he comes here to visit with us, my children all love Julio, and we've known him for more than 20 years. And I've stayed at his home. He stays here. I've been there. We know each other's families. It's a deep relationship. Well, a couple of years ago, he came to visit and he was limping. And he's a strong man. He walks in and out of the mountains. This is not a man that's out of shape. And I said to him, what happened to you? Why are you limping like this? Do you want me to take you to a doctor? And he said, no. He said, I'm limping like this because the shaman sent a negative poison arrow to me. And he said, invisibly, not that it did it directly in his body. And he said, he was jealous of me because I was coming up to the United States and he didn't want me to leave the community. So he did this, he put this negative thing in me to try and keep me here from going there. He said, but I just have to live with it. I have not been able to get it out of my body. It's now this many years later, and he came to visit again recently, and he's still limping. And I said, are you sure you don't want to go to a doctor to see if there's something wrong with your hip? And he said, no, this was all done by a shaman, and I have to live with this now because he gave me negative, dark energy from his jealousness. So I can tell you that amongst Huichol people, that they will say, yes, there are shamans that are doing negative work. And when I was there, and being protected by Miguel, the man that I traveled there with, he told me the first thing before I entered the mountains, the sacred areas, he said, if any of my friends or people give you a drink or a tortilla or any kind of food, he said, I don't want you to eat it. He said, because the shaman could have put negative, bad energy in there because you're a white woman coming into our place and they may have some sort of anger or something. So don't eat anything unless I approve of the person who gave it to you. So every time someone would give me something, unless it was a sealed soda or a sealed package, I would not eat it. I would put it in my bag, my Huichol bag, and I'd say, oh, so-and-so gave me these tortillas. And he'd say, oh, you can eat those. But if there was somebody who I shouldn't have eaten it, it was because they felt and it wasn't just him, it was, in the community, to protect me from shamans that will do negative, bad energy things to you. On my own experience, I spoke about, in case the listeners hadn't heard the shows earlier, I spoke about that dark feeling of negativity coming at me from a shaman that I was working with, who was my friend, Zords Batar. I don't know for sure, but I feel that there was alcohol involved in it. That was the sense I was getting when the negative energy was coming at me. And it was because I wasn't willing to do what he wanted me to do. I was supposed to do the things he said, like I wanted to go be in a hotel for a couple of days. He didn't want me to do that. And in the room there that night, I experienced one of the most frightening feelings of negative energy coming at me that's invisible, but even an actual bird flew in the window at 1:00 in the morning and flew around my hotel room and flew out. So there was something about what was going on that you can't speak words, but your body knows what's going on, and it's not out of thin air, really, even though it's not visible. So I do believe that there can be shamans, I think maybe, that have done maybe both positive and negative energy things. There might be some who, I think in the wheat shows, there might have been one or two where they feel like they sort of gone off the deep end and are in the negative place. But I can't speak for all shamans of the world or anything like, the answer for that, their negative things. I really hope your listeners understand I'm trying to answer as best I can, but some of this information is in books that I have not read to be able to answer what these shamans think specifically.
Okay. And we have 15 more minutes. Here's a question from Tai Pao, who says, are there any spiritual communities you're actively participating in at home or that correlate well with Mongolian shamanism?
The only community that I've continued to be in is the Ruth Inga Hines community of shamanism and alternative modes of healing, which now has a different name since she's passed on. I'm not sure if it's called just Shamanism Conference, but because of COVID, I have not been able to, intermingle with all these different shamans that used to come here to my house, shamans from all over the world. There's a center in the town near us, Guerneville, who brings in also amazing shamans, and I was able to go to some of their events. But because of COVID, the only communications I've had has been directly with my shamans in Mongolia. And I can't answer locally, there are things online that people might be able to find during, I don't have the exact name here, but we can always give it to you later. But Lucy Lewis is heading the shamanism conference now, and it's been all virtual. We're hoping that this next spring it will not be, and I will help participate with that. And it'll be up north from here in a beautiful retreat kind of area. But most everything has become, Zoom or being online. I prefer the in-person experience.
And a related question here from Foreshore, who asks, he wonders why psychics, he or she wonders why psychics didn't feel that COVID was coming, or did they? You would think they would pick up on such a thing.
Okay. If he were to review some of the things of the work of Stephen Schwartz has done two different sections, or I don't know what you want to call them, section 1 and section 2, where he's been asking remote viewers. I happen to have participated in this one, and it was remote viewing into the future. And he has thousands of people who have reported back to him things that I'm not sure if they're on his website or exactly, but when he first had them remote viewing into 2000 and something or other, there are things that those remote viewers saw that have come to, I believe, have happened. And it's a matter of him going through all those different submissions of remote viewings and him gathering up the information of what was, more universally stated by, what was said the most in these groups of people. So there was a recent one that he did, that's his new one, which I think he has already 1,500 already done. I'm not sure. And it was remote viewing into 2060. And unfortunately, I had recorded it all on my phone. And when I got a new phone, it lost all the recording of it. But he remote viewed, and I did this with him on video. So he has this in this group of things. And it was December 15th, 2019. And when I remember and recall some of the things that I said, they feel like what we're experiencing right now, even though he was asking me about 2060. So a couple of the things that I remembered, which I didn't know that it was going to be a COVID thing or COVID was coming then, was that I kept remarking that he had me remote view and I was going to cities and country places all around the world. And when I would go to them, I couldn't find children anywhere. Like the children were all hiding or something. There was no children. And I couldn't only find them in like very remote areas where I could find like a family all together. And I was feeling like it felt like the cities were like drones or something, like people had left a lot of the cities and it was all just sort of like drone-like people, like just going to their job or something. Do you know what I mean? And it was only in places that were like the country that I found that there was still life or familyness or a positive energy. And the only thing I note is that it feels like after that remote viewing that I did start to notice, like everywhere as I went in the stores and things, like all of a sudden children were not out there anywhere. And I wasn't seeing kids when I went to shop, and the world outside from my home was changing rapidly around me. And people were becoming more in fear of each other, that maybe they're going to spread this disease to each other. Whether that remote viewing had anything to do with what came up, I can't say because I was looking into 2060. But my guess is that there are remote viewers out there that have documented knowing that these things were coming. I'm just not sure which person or where to say to your listener that they would find that information. But I do believe that there was that going on, I'm sure.
And we do have on the New Thinking Aloud channel an interview with Stefan Schwartz. It's called Remote Viewing the Future. You could do a Google search or check our listings page and it'll come up. So yes, people are able to look into the future and see things. And as I recall now, one of the things that his viewers predicted back in the 1970s, before the AIDS crisis began, they predicted the onset of AIDS. So these things are possible, but remote viewers and shamans are still human. They're not perfect. We
right.
all
Nobody
have
has
our blind
100%,
spots.
right?
Yeah. Druon Nicholson is asking Gail, what is the most impactful shamanic experience you have had?
Well, I'm going to say my initiation was one, because having grown up in the type experiences that I had dealt with a lot of low esteem. And there was something about the shamanic initiation that healed me of a lot of that feeling that I was never seen. And now I felt like I was being seen for the first time by this Mongolian woman. But the most powerful, impactful one for me would be having cancer and working with the Huichol shamans back in the 90s in the mountains of Mexico. I was raised in a family that was not conventional, and I had been raised to always believe that doctors were evil and that they were only there to kill you, not to help you. And if you go to a hospital, you go in, you're never coming out. These were the kind of things that, and I was raised seeing amazing healings without pharmaceutical drugs and medical interventions. So I had been given a diagnosis that I had cervical cancer, but I didn't really believe I had cervical cancer because it was from a pap smear, and I hardly believed in pap smears, and I hadn't had one in 5 years, but somebody said, you have to do this, you have to do this. So I went and did the pap smear. And when they said I had cancer and that you have to have a biopsy, I didn't really believe I had cancer. And so, I didn't have the biopsy. And instead I went down to Mexico to be with the Huichol Indians. And when I went down there, I had, his name was Nietzsche. And he was like, he was my friend Julio's shaman. So he was like, before you even go to a shaman there, it has to be their shaman or someone they feel is the right shaman. And he does a healing on me, and he stops at my crotch and tells me, there's a hardened mass inside there, and you need to have it cut out. And I'm, this is Huichol into Spanish into me, so these are, trying our best to communicate. And it's that moment from that shaman that I believed I had cancer. Up until then, I didn't really believe that. When they said, oh yeah, you got to go in for a biopsy, it's showing bad, whatever. I was like, oh yeah, they just want to make money on me. It's what my dad said. But when he told me, it hit deep into my heart and soul. And I sat there on a mountaintop crying my heart out. And I was depressed like you can't imagine, being alone and discovering I have cancer, and I can't even talk to anybody there because my Spanish is, más o menos. I'm not going to be able to get into any in-depth conversation. And my friend's father, he lived to, I think, about 107 or something. He was considered one of the most respected men in their community because he still holds the traditional old ways and had not been influenced by Christianity or other things. And he saw me crying, and he prepared for me something that I didn't know at the time and found out sometime later was the dried blood of the deer that is their cure for lumps or things or what healings of the body for sickness. And I ate it. And I felt like Superwoman for 4 days. I went from depression to feeling like I can do this. I will get rid of this cancer. I will be healthy and strong again. I'm going to be good. And when I left there with such a positive attitude that I was going to go have my biopsy and, address this whole issue. And I had originally been told that, it could spread to the rest of your body if you don't have this checked out. And I waited a year before I went back to the doctor, and he cut out this tumor inside my cervix and half my cervix. And he said, and I was, I think, 34 years old at the time. And he said, I don't know what you did with your Indians. This is his quote, but you did something, because this cancer has completely shielded itself with the skin all around it and sealed it. And so the tumor did not spread anywhere else in your body, and you encapsulated the cancer. And I'm taking it out now with the cervix. And I, by the way, had 2 more children after that at home, with a midwife, one and one with a doctor. And I had half a cervix, and I was 35. So I gave birth almost within like a year of having the cancer removed. And then I got pregnant again at 40 and 41. I delivered my 3rd child underwater, both with half a cervix, both what's considered high risk births. And they came out beautifully. They were born, as the lady said, is what we call a perfect birth. So I feel that that's the most important thing that shaman did for me, which is, save my life.
Very impactful experience, Gail. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're just about out of time. I want to share with you a comment from Jonathan Milgie, who says, please reassure Gail. She's doing a wonderful job answering these questions.
Thank you so much. Jonathan, is that his name?
Yes.
Thank you, Jonathan. You made my evening. I won't be having anxiety when we hang up.
Well, what a pleasure it has been being with you, Gail. We have like 1 minute. Do you want to share a final thought with our viewers?
It's, I don't know how best you can do it. It's a time to be as positive as you can be in this world right now, and to try and be as loving and as fear-free as you can be in these trying times. I think that's the most important thing we can do to get through this, is to be positive, think about that it will be a happy and healthy future for us all.
I totally agree. I think that's a wonderful message to share. I'd like to remind all of our viewers that they can subscribe for free to our weekly newsletter for New Thinking Allowed if they go to the New Thinking Allowed Foundation website, which is New Thinking Allowed, ALLOWED. But New Thinking Allowed is all one word, and .org, O-R-G, and they can get our weekly newsletter, which is packed full of interesting and informative information. And now I am going to... They can subscribe for free